Hello and welcome everybody. It's wonderful to see such a full room in the second last of our learning from the C-suite sessions for the day. What legacy would you like to leave? How do you manage to make a marked difference that will have a sustained and profound impact in the world one day? I'm Anneke Andrews, and it's my absolute pleasure to welcome here with us today Fergus Marupen, Group Head, Human Resources for Sappi, Malisha Awunor, HR Director for BHBW South Africa, and Abey Kgotle, Executive Director of Human Resources, Mercedes-Benz. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
So, if I can maybe kick off with just a very general question. Looking at you as an HR leader, how do you make sure that you make a true impact, a real, meaningful difference?
Here you go. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Good afternoon, and thank you very much for the invitation and the opportunity to share some insights on our journeys. Well, firstly, I think it's absolutely critical that you know the business, because I have learned over the years that at times we try and put solutions on the table which are not really helping with addressing what the business requires at a point in time. So absolutely critical as an HR professional that you understand the business, you know the pressure points that the business has, and that you are able to partner with business in ensuring that we have people solutions to those business problems, because in the end, the business is nothing. Business will not be successful without the people, and your role as an HR professional, as somebody who knows the people management game, hopefully, is to help the business in finding those HR solutions that enable business solutions and hopefully end up in unlocking the potential that we have in our people on a day-to-day basis.
Spot on.
Yes, thank you. I just want to go one step further to what Abey mentioned in terms of just how do you go about ensuring that you create some kind of not just a legacy, because when you're in HR, don't work for the first prize. Except you dare to, as Abey said, that you need to provide solutions. But whatever you put in place, there should be a calibration of what you would like to do, how you calibrate it across the business, how you calibrate it up and down within the business, and also how do you go about shaping relationships while you're busy defining certain solutions within a business. How do you shape relationships with, first of all, the executive team that you work with? Important, the team that you work with, because I don't operate in isolation as a head of HR. I've got a team of HR people and HR professionals that wants to make a difference. And how do I harness their collective capabilities to make sure that we can be successful? And then ultimately, if you have all those elements in aligned, you should be able to do or to make quite a big impact within the business.
Definitely.
I think further to alignment, since we're going around this way, is that understand.
Okay, yeah, I think.
I think in addition to the alignment, is understanding that in every situation you encounter, you can either leave the person or yourself worse off or better off. And in terms of legacy, they say people will often forget what you say, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And that is the care and compassion that comes with being in HR. Alignment, vertical, horizontal, definitely, but also with internal stakeholders and external stakeholders, understanding that our people come from communities, right? And that impact that we make needs to extend beyond our business and impact the communities within which we operate as well.
Yeah. And so clearly, where you start with any solution is not about the difference that you would like to make up front. It's just to say, what solution is it that you would like to make sure that it's there? And then you continuously work at it and making sure that whatever you implement, it makes a difference to people's lives, and then it will be successful from that point of view.
Malisha, that is such a valid and true comment.
Yeah.
You shared with me, Fergus, won't you tell the audience, you've got a great story around women in your organization.
Yeah.
I love that.
So I came, I must say, I've came into the back end of the conversation earlier where people were talking about actually just the glass ceiling for women within the business, and how difficult it is actually for women to advance in a business. And I ask permission, if I may ask you, to speak as a male. So part of the challenge I have is sometimes with women in themselves. So we will challenge and we will ask them to give us, this is what we would like to do, and can it work? So I always double check if it can work. And I found most of the challenges I have with women. So that's one example. The second example is I use an Afrikaans phrase continuously when I have got a number of women, because I find they like really competitive, so we want to work, we want to make a difference. Then I usually say, kan ek give dames vra om net mooi saam te speel vandag? Which means I'm just asking the ladies to play nicely today, so that it's the intention, and that's why I've asked permission to speak, because this is real life examples. However, it's not difficult. If there's commitment from everyone to make sure that we want to enhance and we want to empower ladies, a couple of simple steps that you can put in place. For instance, in our forestry business, forestry, you work outside, you work in communities. So the average profile of a forester in Sappi, it's black, she's a lady, she comes from a rural town in KZN. She either studied at Stellenbosch University Forestry, either a BSc honors degree, or she comes from a technical college where she does forestry. And they are tough as nails. And we've managed to appoint quite a number of them, and they make a significant contribution within the business. So it just depends on what's the will, how we get people to cooperate and work together, and how we make it easier for creating the opportunities for ladies to say, listen, this is potentially where you can go, and making sure that whatever policies and stuff you have in place supports that part. So it's a collaboration between all of us.
And having the women in those roles make your organization stronger and better. I just thought, Malisha, when you made the comment around communities with what Fergus said earlier, there are examples like that. Maybe you've probably also got examples of where, the things that we do goes broader and beyond our organization.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, maybe just one comment on the point that Fergus was making. And your story, Fergus, reminds me of 25 years ago when we were transitioning into where we are as a democratic state. And some of the conversations that we used to have about, well, what opportunities do we create for black people to get in, and how do we enable that? And with that came, but in fact, all I need is for you to recognize that I can do what the other person can do, and that the fact that I happen to be black doesn't mean that I need, this special attention that needs to be given in order for me to access opportunities. All that I need is to access opportunities the same way that the other person does. And from there, leave me alone. I will tell you what support that I need to develop further. And I'm finding more and more that as we discuss the role of women and the extent to which women are represented, in our senior levels of leadership, it is almost becoming that conversation as well, which is why I like your story, because your story is really about recognizing that a woman can do what anyone else can do. And the only reason why we don't have as many women as we should have today is because we've, with our patriarchal system, closed out those opportunities, and we need to unleash those opportunities. So it's a beautiful story, and I have found, for example, in my role at Mercedes-Benz, when I joined 2.5 years ago, and I walked around the plant and I said, well, I don't see women leaders in production. And knowing that we have a 25-year history of women being in production, I am not happy that I don't see women in leadership positions in production. And as we have more and more of these conversations, we're starting to see more women coming through, because I'm saying it's really not about capacity or competence. It's about seeing women in the same way that I look at you as a man when I have an opportunity, and enabling a woman to access the opportunities the same way that you're accessing them. So it's a beautiful story indeed. I mean, the story that we have about the impact of what we do, I can possibly go back to East London again and talk about the Mercedes-Benz Learning Academy, which we use as a basis of ensuring that we've got the skills that we need today and tomorrow, and that we do both for our own needs as Mercedes-Benz and for the community. So there's a group of youngsters, very, very exciting group, energetic group of youngsters that we have taken over a number of years through various learnership programs, who are now able to access opportunities within Mercedes-Benz. This year, for example, 123 of these young people have been able to access opportunities with the supplier, jobs that they didn't have. And if you see the impact that has on these youngsters being able to provide for their families, coupled with some of the CSR investments that we do in the communities, fantastic story. So it's really about, where are these opportunities and how do we use those opportunities, firstly, to benefit the people that are involved in those opportunities, and secondly, to see those benefits trickling down to the different communities. So, that is one of those stories that come to mind immediately if I think about the impact that we have beyond just the just over 4,000 people that work for Mercedes-Benz South Africa.
Absolutely. It's about unlocking the opportunities and unlocking the value that's right there.
Yeah.
Malisha?
No, I was going to say, you talk about building a critical mass, right?
Yeah.
Because that becomes your feeding ground into your organization. But I think it's equally important that as HR professionals, we create, I want to say culture, but that's overused a lot, but an environment where we can have the safe conversation. When I joined, so everybody wants to know what BHBW is. I sell tractors and forklifts. That's the basis of our business. And we maintain them. So you can imagine we are in the farming industry and we are in manufacturing industries. When I joined, I got told we had no female apprentices because they get pregnant within 3 months. We now have 36% women on our apprenticeship program, but we've had to do a lot of conversations with the technical training officers, with the other apprentices, so that we also could create a safe space for our young women to be able to thrive. And it's little things, guys. Change room facilities. While we brought in female apprentices, our customers didn't have female change rooms. The PPE that we provide. So all of the woman and man are equal in terms of ability, but there are certain things that we need to change in the way in which we operate to make it more conducive.
You're reminding me of my days in mining.
Yeah.
When you talk about things like accommodating women. And for those of you that are familiar with the mining space, if you are appointed as an underground worker in the mining world, it's a tough world. Even I cannot survive in that environment. And simple things that women used to complain about years ago, and things that we take for granted, and they are actually very, very critical. One, where are the facilities that women can use underground? Two, PPE, most of us, think very, lightly about it. It is a reality. If you are in a mining world or in your space where you've got one suit or one-piece suit, how do you as a woman work through that? And it becomes very difficult also if you come to that time of the month where you need to be able to, easily do what you need to do. So it's little things like those that HR professionals, at times we look at them and we say, this is a safety issue. It's not a safety issue. It's a people issue.
Yeah.
It's really about how do you ensure that the workplace is conducive for all of us, men, women, people living with disabilities. It's really about ensuring that we've got workplaces that are conducive. And that is a critical role that we as HR professionals ought to be playing and ought to play it a lot more.
Can I maybe just say also, Warren, I look at the people in the room today, and part of the legacy that we can leave is actually helping to develop the next generation of HR professionals that will be able to step up in our particular space. And that's something that's worrying me a bit, because it's as if, either there's a big skills challenge that we have, or people don't have the ability to step up into the next space, or people waiting for the opportunity to step up. And I would really like, if there's a legacy that I would be very proud of, would be a legacy where, the next generation of HR leaders, they're ready, they're willing to take up the challenge, and they need to kick us out of our jobs, so as simple as that.
It's each person's job to work themselves out of a job.
Yeah.
There's no two ways about it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot that we as HR practitioners can do to create more of that environment and to encourage people to stand up, to be there, to speak up and to make things happen. Because the examples you cite, it's basics, and you often don't think about it. So you do need the kind of environment where you must encourage your people that if they see, we need 2 ladies' bathrooms for every half a men's bathroom, as a silly example. And there's lots that can be done, but people need to feel empowered to speak up and to say, but hang on, we have a basic need. This is something that we need to address.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, what's critical for me is always, in the first instance, the space that you create for people to be able to do that, right? So assuming that space is there, because it's absolutely critical that you have the space within which people can exert themselves. But, I've always found that the challenge with HR professionals is the space is there, but you're not showing up. And if you don't show up, it ain't going to happen. If I look at my own journey of being in the HR field, my very, very first management role was some 100 years ago. And I was told, well, your predecessor is going, and you're going to step in. And it comes at a time where I probably only had about 2 years or 2.5 years of experience in HR, right? And I had the choice of either stepping up and learning how to find my way out of that pool, or bemoaning the fact that I'm not ready, and you haven't done this, you haven't done that, you haven't done that. So it's always critical for you, for your own development, that you are able to step up. And I have this saying that development is an individual project. Right? It's not a project that the organization does for you. Your development is your own responsibility. And unless you accept that responsibility for your own development, nobody's going to accept it for you.
100%. No one else is going to look out for you like you should be looking out for yourself.
Yep.
So if we look at a practical level on that point, how do we help HR professionals to be better heard, to be more seen, and for them then in turn to assist others in the organization to do the same thing?
I think for me, you alluded to it in the previous session when we spoke about sponsoring and mentoring. So we have an opportunity to be able to invite our team members. So rather than me have to do a presentation, my team member come and do the presentation. So you create those avenues for exposure. Number two is the mentoring. I'm absolutely passionate about mentoring. And you think to yourself, okay, but I've got all these other priorities. Guys, even 5 minutes of your time could change a person's perspective from, I'm not going to apply to this position, to, I've got what it takes. Make yourself available, and I know I've said it in the previous session as well, but sometimes all a person needs is to hear, one, it's okay to not be okay. It's also okay to not know everything. Then you go back and you Google the hell out of it. But it's important that you deliver the hard work that comes with the positions that you get.
But in addition to that, and I go back to the point I made when we started our conversation, one of the reasons why HR is not seen as being a critical part of the business is because I don't know if it's a question of us being too shy to take the role or whatever it is that is holding us back from, taking our space. In my organization, I'm in the board of directors, and I'm in the group ExCom of the business. And I sit there with my peers from finance, from marketing and sales, and from everyone else, not as somebody who is, probably at a different level or whatever. We are peers. We are at the same level. I sit there as a business leader, and I sit there as somebody who understands the business. I sit there as somebody who can contribute towards a conversation about why are we not reaching the milestones that we need to reach from a production point of view. I can have a conversation about production. I can have a conversation about the quality challenges that we have, and I can have a conversation about any topic that you can think of within the business. The minute you get yourself to know the business that well, you earn the respect of business, and you earn your right to be at the table, and you earn the right for people to be able to listen to you. But again, once you are there, step up, own the role, and don't hold back. That's what business expects of us. You can do all the other good things, mentoring, absolutely critical. I believe very, very strongly in that. So you can have all the support that you need, and I will enable that, but I need you to step up. And that way, you become a much stronger HR leader, and hopefully that helps us build the new pool of HR leaders that this country desperately needs.
Yeah. And I would like to say, to HR people, because this conversation has been ongoing since the work of Dave Ulrich and everything, that we need to be, step up, the business needs us. You're part of the business. And I've never been in an organization where it's not the case, where, people need to fight, where HR needs to prove their word, whether they can do this. In fact, it's like, you're here, so I need to know what the solution is going to be. And obviously, from that point of view, it's important. And I would like us to get that out of our minds, out of our heads, to say that we don't add value to any business. You talk to people, it's like, oh, no, HR is not adding any value. I've never experienced that in the last 10 years of my life now. In fact, I need to stop at some point and say, because we can only do so much, and because there are certain solutions that needs to be provided. And I think what Abey and said is it's important how we step up, how we relate, how you work with your CEO, how you work with your board of directors, because that's also important stakeholder in where you need to make sure that HR is at the table. How you work with your management team, you know. And I've read a book there. I can't get to the name now, but they call it an axis, you know, between the HR manager, the HR head, the CFO, and the CEO. If those three are not aligned in the business, it's unlikely that there will be any success. So it's important that I need to understand the agenda of the finance guys. I need to know understand what's top of mind for my HR head. And I can tell you, in my business, my boss is like in my office 3-4 times a day. And even if we just talk about something quickly about the business or something about, because another part about what you need to do as HR, you should also have the ability to relate to the business. Okay, sometimes I get feedback from people to say that, you know, I'm not going to HR because I can't talk to those people. Or the lady that's in charge of HR, she don't talk to us. She sits behind the computer, she closes the door and all of it. You need to have the ability to relate to the business, because once you relate to the business relates to you. And how you actually go into the business and actually help to have solutions. So that's something to build on to what the both of you said, is that like you're there. You don't have to worry whether you have the right to be in the business. You have the right to be in the business. You just need to make sure that you're present in that business, and you make sure that you arrive and you go and make the difference in the business.
And I think you need to keep the power. You know, don't wait for someone to invite you, or don't say they haven't told me or no one's asked me. Make it happen.
Yeah.
Get up, ask, make sure that things happen and that you get what you want.
Yeah.
I'm just going back to a point that you made, Malisha, and you too, Abey, is if we think of the role that HR can play in terms of exposing people to the broader business, because, you know, for us, it absolutely makes sense. You need to understand the business from a strategic perspective. You need to appreciate the numbers, the nuts and bolts. But from a junior level, I think it's people don't necessarily know where to start or where, you know, how do I go about it? Perhaps some examples from your side, and I know that in a lot of organizations there are wonderful stories about HR practitioners rotating in the business. You know, sitting in the call center, going out and repping, whatever the case may be. Perhaps some practical examples or ideas of how HR can make a difference to create that kind of environment.
Sorry, looks like I'm crying, but I'm not. In my previous role, we actually changed the entire onboarding process from a mining perspective. I'm also from mining. That you get to spend time underground, that you get to spend time during shift change, that you get to spend time in the processing plant, because we have the opportunity, or we're in positions where we can provide that opportunity for others. And the value add you're able to deliver, given you give up that 2 weeks or 3 weeks, you then hit the ground running without trying to navigate what is this new thing looking like. And I think it starts with little things like that. The exposure you provide people with, inviting individuals to meetings that may seem as, oh, it's only for Exco, but our people have a voice, and we need to provide them with a platform to share that voice.
Yeah, and I mean, I have an HR professional, he's in junior management, that we moved from Pretoria to East London. And I said to him, well, I mean, firstly, the adjustment is moving into the small dorpy, which is laid back, and most people say, well, there isn't a lot to do. And I say, well, there's a lot to do in East London. You've got the beautiful coastline, you've got the Nahoon beach where you can go walk and do all those things. And I see some people here from Emonti who can relate to this. And I said to him, well, it's a huge adjustment, but my advice to you is the following. This is part of your leadership development journey, and in order for you to derive value from this journey, it's important for you to know the business. And that meant that he needs to spend time in the plant, not in his office. You need to spend time in the plant, on the line, to understand what issues people deal with on a day-to-day basis. You need to understand what an operator goes through on a daily basis. You need to understand what a team leader goes through on a daily basis. And once you've understood that, you are in a much better place to have a conversation with a production guy about an HR problem. And I've said to him, at times we look at production and we say, these guys are demanding and all that, without you appreciating why they are like that. And this colleague, having spent time on the line and up to this day, spending time walking around, learning a lot more, he is becoming a lot more impactful with the production team. And in fact, if I look at where he was when he started and where he is today, I'm quite pleased with the trust levels that he's been able to earn with just doing a simple thing like go spend time on the line, talk to the people, get to understand what they're going through, and that way you become a better HR professional. When I find time to do that, I walk inside the plant. When I'm in the Pretoria office, I try, walk around, and there are simple things that I do, like just asking, hey, Anneke, how are you?
Yep.
And how is your family, and all that. That way you connect at a much deeper level with people.
Thank you. That's very useful. I want to ask you, Fergus, have you got an example of where someone has made an enormous difference in your life and in your career journey? I remember years ago when I started auditing, there were very few women, and I would audit mines, for example. And I had a boss who would insist that I return the client's call. So the client would always phone him, and he would always insist that I call them back. Mm-hmm. And eventually, look, it did take some time, but eventually they started phoning me because they realized it was just quicker to phone me directly and get the answer. So have you got an example of where someone has made a difference in your life? Because I think when we look at examples like that, you realize there's things that you can do that make a huge difference in terms of enabling someone's career.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe just some background. So my career actually took quite a number of turns where I ended up with Sappi. But the one example is when I still used to work for a company called Isco Mining. Now, those of you that don't know, Isco Mining used to be, so today there's what's left of Isco Mining would be Exaro and Kumba Iron Ore, and what's left of Metal. So that would be the old Isco environment. And there was one particular individual that worked at one operation. So part of what you need to do is you need to work all over. So I've worked in a place called Shloban, which is about 25 kilometers east of Vryheid in KwaZulu-Natal. And that was part of my development. And so I had to go there and go and learn something. And every time I would go to this individual and ask him, listen, I need to do this. And remember, I was only like a year in that company. And then he would call me, and he had a way of talking to me. So he was a really big guy. And I said, Fergus, now you just turn around and you see those files over there. Go to file number 5. And you take out file number 5, you open page number 200. And I need to do it. Open the page, and I said, okay, so read to me what it says on page number 5 or page number 200. Then I had to read to him. And then say, okay, put it back, now you go and do it. And the lesson from that individual, I know it was, it's like, here we go again, But the most important element of any HR professional is the ability to know your subject matter, because that is important. Because if you don't know your subject matter, you're not able to provide the solutions to the business. And that was my first hard lesson that I've learned, and that made such an impact. So wherever I go, I will say to my team, listen, right, when you go to a process, there's 4 steps that you need to go through. First of all, make sure that you understand the problem. Make sure that you get enough information to make sure that we can solve that problem. We review alternatives, and we come up with a solution. As simple as that, because you can't solve something if you don't know what to do. And I will have that for the rest of my life. And whatever I do, if I need to go to a board meeting, shut up, listen, understand what's happening, make sure that you know what's going to happen, and then you provide the solutions, what you need to do. So that person made quite a profound impact in my life. Can I share another story? Because it's important how people relate to you, because that builds the confidence in how you go ahead. I remember many years ago, I got appointed as the head of HR for Kumba Resources at that point, again from mining. And I was still very young. I was about 36, 37 at that point. And I remember my boss came into the office the 7th of January of that year when I took over as the GM of that position. And he closed the door and he said, okay, let's have coffee. And he was the CEO and he said, Fergus, I appointed you because I know you can make a difference and I have full confidence in you. And that was like, because I was stressed out the whole December holiday. You know, I had to start in January and into this big job that I don't know what I'm going to do. I know what I was going to do, but at least that I have the confidence of the senior guy on my first day coming into the position and having that conversation with me. And I tell you, that just changed my life. And maybe that's something when you have new people in your organization, how you relate to those new people, what type of confidence we say to people that you can do it and how we need to do that. And that made a major difference in my life. And that said, if he says I can do it, it means I can do it, which means I need to go out and go do it. Yeah.
And you know what's so critical, and I think it's something you touched on earlier, Malisha's too, is expect more of people.
Yeah.
Then, you know, try and expect more of people, even than you think that you believe or they believe, and they will surprise you and step up to the plate every time. What it takes is someone to I trust you, I know that you can do a great job, and they will outperform every single time. That confidence makes such a difference.
It does indeed, and I mean, I could go back 100 years ago, but you know, if I just go back to about 7 or so years ago, some of you may know that I spent time in Lonmin, right? And I've moved through different roles in Lonmin, and in 2012, when we had the tragedy that we had, I get pulled back into HR. And, you know, the chairman of the board says to me, you need to help us sort this thing out. And you are in a space where, in the first instance, you are grappling with the reality of the pain, of the tragedy that has just happened. And I remember at the time I was thinking about the lady who worked at the switchboard, who had just said to me, Mr. Kgotle, my cousin has been killed. And I had the image of her cousin. I saw the pictures. I saw the brutality with which he was killed. I saw images of 9 other people who were killed before August 12, brutally, and some of them people I know. So you're grappling with this reality that you're going through your own pain of the tragedy that has happened, and you're asking yourself a lot of questions about what could we have done and how could we have averted this. And amidst all that, you are now called upon to find solutions. You're called upon to help the organization, firstly, resolve the strike, and secondly, go through a process of healing. And, you know, I was narrating to somebody that when I had to have the first meeting with the leaders of the strike, the first image that came to my mind was blood that was dripping in people's hands. And I remember what the chairman said to me. He said, we need you to help us sort this thing out. And we know that you have what it takes to help us sort it out. And it's a journey that put me and my life at, you know, it was personal risk for me because I could have been killed as well. But you forget about all that and you think about the nation that is in pain because of this tragedy, the need to find a solution, and the need to work with people that you wouldn't ordinarily want to work with. So navigating that space, relying on the fact that you have the support of the chairman of the board, and he specifically asks for you and nobody else to help sort that out. I asked myself, why me? And I ended up saying to myself, why not me? And I had the privilege of having my family behind me and my wife saying to me, come on, you can do it. So working through that very, very complex, painful situation, knowing that there's somebody who believes in you and who says, we know that it is possible, we know that it's going to be tough, we know that it is going to take a lot out of you, but we have full confidence in you. And hey, we are here to support you when you need that support. Just knowing that is what helped me work through that situation, get to a point where we're able to find a solution, and get to a point where by the time I left Lonmin, the relationship was fully repaired. I was able to sign a 3-year wage agreement without a strike, without any production disruption. I was able to work through one of the most difficult restructuring exercises without work stoppage, without any disruption. Getting to work through, and I don't know if any one of us has worked through that, but having to face a union and unions and say you want to cut down 7,000 jobs is no easy task.
Easy, yeah.
But being able to do that against the backdrop of what we had in Marikana in 2012 was something that I look back at and say, wow, it has been possible. So it is always helpful to know that there's somebody who believes in you and somebody who will always say, come on, you can, let's go. And that is an experience that I hold very dearly. Painful as it was, I hold very dearly to this day.
Yeah.
Very powerful.
Abey just triggers something, just in terms of, you reminded me of something, just also the important part of what we need to do, and that's the ethical component of our job, and how you need to guide through all ethical decisions on a day-to-day basis, similar like what you've done in terms of how you restructure, how do you let people go, how do you make sure that you maintain the integrity of your function, how do you maintain your integrity in that, and that's quite an important one. And at some point, in any point of your lives, you are going to be confronted and conflicted with a couple of ethical dilemmas that you will have to work through. And sometimes there's no textbook answer to that particular ethical dilemma you sit with. Sometimes people already went through that same ethical dilemma, and sometimes you will have to make a decision to say that if this ethical framework doesn't fit me, what's my decision in terms of that particular ethical framework? And do I need to step away from that particular part, or do I continue in that environment that that's not in line with ethics?
Yes.
Make the right decision every time, maintaining the dignity of those around you.
Exactly. Yep.
Consistency.
Yeah.
Then it's easy. So on that high note, I would like to ask if there's questions from the audience for our panel. Any questions? Question over here. Thank you. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Ella from Denon, Southern Africa. I just wanted to find out from the panel, do you generally feel, sorry, I'm just going to be gender-based, it's a gender-based question, that females in general are skeptical or reluctant to step up to the table? Because I think that for me, it's the mindset that needs to change and the perception, and it has been generally part of our culture, even how we've been raised generally across board. I'll give you an example. If I'm with my partner or husband and I'm expecting a baby, and then we go to a gathering, maybe a gathering with friends, generally more people will come to the female and say, you're pregnant, and then they'll probably ask you, so have you decided what you're going to do regarding your job? And they wouldn't say that to my partner. I don't know if you get me.
Yeah.
So generally we've been taught, it's been part of a culture, females probably more, females generally need to be at home, raise up children, and then men are not expected to do that. So for me, it's the mindset, it's part of our culture, how we've been raised up with the whole females and males. So I just wanted to know, generally within the companies you've worked for, is that what you've actually assessed, that females are more skeptical to rise up and come to the table because it's more expected that men should be more successful in terms of careers compared to us?
Yeah. Well, I've had the privilege of working with many great women, powerful women, people who are able to step up, and people who challenge me to be better and to become a lot sharper in my thinking and all that. So I wouldn't say that I necessarily agree that women find it, or women are a lot more skeptical about stepping up. I think women are able to step up.
Yeah.
I think that what is going wrong with our organizations, and certainly some of the examples I've seen elsewhere, is that if you remain trapped in the patriarchal system, your lens that you are using to look at a woman is through that, is patriarchy. And until you remove that lens and see a woman as a colleague like any other, who is able to do what anyone else can do, you will not realize the power that you have in the colleagues that you have. I remember 3 years ago, I had one of my managers who is a lady, and she comes to me and she says, "You keep talking about agility, you keep talking about this, you keep talking about that. I'm going to put you to a test." She didn't know me that well by then, but she had the courage to step up and to come to me and to say, "I'm going to take you up on that. And this is what I would like to do. And let's see if we can do that." And I have many of those examples of great women who are able to step up, who are able to do what they are trained to do. And all that they need is for me as a man to remove my patriarchal lens and to look at them as human beings, less like the way I look at men.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
That was great.
Yeah, okay.
I'm so sorry we're out of time. We're almost going to run into the next session.
There's a gentleman at the back here.
Is there one more gentleman at the back? Okay. So we quickly fit in one more question.
okay, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Good afternoon. My name's Jasper from a business called Wise Talk. I'd be interested in hearing the panel's perspective on whether the level of engagements of like the lawnman workers, if that was increased, could the situation there have been reduced or possibly avoided, but certainly reduced in the tensions there?
Come again? Sorry.
So it's a question about the levels of engagements that the workers have with the business and the leadership. Would that have materially reduced the tensions at Marikana had they been engaged? Do you think that would have made a material difference to what happened there?
I think that what happened in 2012, beyond what people like talking about, a lot more social conditions and all that, I think that you had a situation of something that was bound to happen. Whether it happened at Lonmin or it happened anywhere else, it was bound to happen. If you find yourself in a situation where you have unions who are battling for members, and just to give you a feel, when I left Lonmin, the majority union was collecting about 1.8 million rands a month in subscriptions. That's what the fight is about. It's got absolutely nothing to do with the workers' conditions. It's got absolutely nothing to do with living conditions. It's got a lot more to do with I, as a union, wanting to occupy the space and wanting to have the other person removed. And yes, you know, the engagement levels, possibly you could write a theory that says, or a hypothesis that says, if the engagement levels were at this level, you would have averted the strike. But I would argue that it was bound to happen at some point. What is regrettable and what is something that I hope never ever has to happen is the lives that were lost because of that. And those of you that know the mining space very, very well will remember, if you go back many years ago, the years of Mouthpiece and NUM, the lives that were lost, again for territorial fight, and what you saw unfolding with AMCU and NUM is something that has happened in the mining industry for many, many years. And it isn't necessarily just a function of one element. I think it's a multifaceted problem that we faced in 2012.
Thank you. Thank you very much to our awesome panel and for the insightful comments you've made and the value that you've added. It's really greatly appreciated. Can we please have a big round of applause for our panel?